Hey, what's going on everyone? Eric here with Proactive Intuition, and in this video I want to talk to you about the difference in between being a frugal individual and being a cheap individual. Alright guys, so I'm sure you've heard these two terms, frugal and cheap, and I just want to make a video about why you should strive to be a frugal individual. And, a lot of people think that these two terms are kind of the same thing. You're like, oh, well, both of them mean that you're cheap. Well, not necessarily. I consider myself to be a very frugal individual, but I do not consider myself to be a cheap individual. So let me explain a little bit further. So I'm going to be breaking down the definitions real quick of each thing, and then I'll break down kind of the difference between the two. So the definition of being frugal is sparing or economical with regard to money or food. Or another definition is simple and plain and costing little. So now let's switch over to the definition of cheap. All right, so the definition of cheap is low in price, worth more than its cost, or at or for a low price. And you might be saying, Eric, both of those things are kind of the same. And by the bland definition of both, they are very similar in terms. But to me, when it comes to being a frugal individual, you are more so frugal in regards to preparing for your future, opposed to cheap is where you're just trying to get the cheapest deal that you can. So I'm going to be showing you guys a couple examples here in a little bit of examples when I was being a cheap individual and examples when I'm being a frugal individual. So when it comes to saving money, I consider myself very frugal. So I like to scrimp and save to invest into my future. I am not frugal when it comes to my investing. I invest a very large portion of my income into the future so that I don't have to make these same sacrifices, 10 plus years from now. Now, if I were just cheap, I would just be looking for the best deals all the time, and that's not necessarily the best thing to do. So I'll give you a quick example. So this is like a computer that I bought, and this laptop is, it wasn't cheap. It's actually a fairly expensive computer. I could have got an older computer that would function and do similar things that this one would, but it would be slower and it would cost me time, which would ultimately end up costing me money. But buying a more modern, up-to-date computer, it allows me to operate my business better. It allows me to be able to get the work I need to get done faster, therefore, which allows me to make more money. I was not frugal when it came to this laptop because I paid up for it because it's going to help me with my performance in the future. Now, an example of being frugal and saving money would be more so like my clothing. I don't go out and buy name brand or designer shoes or shirts or whatever. I don't care about those things because they don't affect my immediate income, opposed to something like that laptop that does affect my immediate income. So hopefully you're following here, but I want to show you guys some really practical life examples. So I'm going to go upstairs and show you some purchases that I made that were a cheap purchase and an example that was a frugal purchase that does not affect my results. Alright guys, so you might be wondering, Eric, why are you up in your bathroom and recording? Well, I want to show you what it was like for me to be a cheap individual and a big mistake that I made. So this is our shower. We got it remodeled about a year ago, and the person that I had do this job was an independent contractor. He wasn't with a big company, and he really appealed to me because he quoted me such a low price. And it doesn't look too bad from the outside here, but if you get closer, this whole entire job was just an absolute train wreck. It took the guy months to do this. The price kept increasing and increasing because he spent all the money and needed more material. So it actually ended up costing me almost as much as it would have to have a professional company do it. But you can see how they just kind of cut corners with everything here. So for instance, like this bugs me every time I get in. The spacing, the tile is not even at all. It's just a really terrible tile job. And it just was not a good example. These little things down here, I had to re-glue back on because they're actually popping off. My worst fear is that we're gonna take a shower and one of these tiles is gonna pop off. So the stress and the, all the BS that kind of came with this was not worth saving maybe $500. I should have been, more intelligent about it and actually paid up a little bit more to get the job done correctly so that I didn't have to worry about it or it didn't bug me every time that I take a shower now, even though this thing is functional. But this is an example of being cheap in your day-to-day life, because this is affecting my day-to-day life. Every time I get in the shower, I'm looking at what a terrible job this was done here, and I'm worried about a towel popping out and falling on my head or something. So I'll show you guys a quick example though of me being frugal with my purchases instead of being cheap, because the item that I bought that I'm going to show you next does not affect my performance or my day-to-day actions. Alright guys, so this purchase here is an example of me being frugal but not cheap. So this TV was actually pretty inexpensive. Now, I could have got a higher quality TV. I could have got something that was like 70 inches long and like super high def and 3D and curvature on the screen. But the thing is that I don't really value TV that much. I don't really care about TV as much, and this serves the purpose that I need it to do. It does not affect my day-to-day lifestyle, it does not affect my income, and I can still watch the same shows on this TV as I can on a super high def TV. So hopefully you guys are understanding the difference between the two, because I think it's really important to distinct what's an important purchase and when should you pay up more for an item. I pay up more for an item when I believe that that item is going to benefit me in some way. So like the car that I drive, I don't drive a super fancy car. Like, we drive a 2018 Hyundai Santa Fe. It's a great SUV, it's reliable, it was cost effective, and I know it's not gonna break down on us from getting us from point A to point B, but am I rolling in like a Rolls Royce? No, absolutely not. But it still serves the same purpose. It still gets me at the same place, and it's super reliable. All right, guys, so now I want to talk about the different characteristics that I see in frugal individuals and in cheap individuals. So let's start over here with frugal. Frugal individuals save their money, but they keep in mind that when they save money, it's not going to hinder performance. So, the clothing that I wear, it doesn't affect how much money I make, and it doesn't affect my performance. Meaning it doesn't affect my work and it doesn't affect my finances. So I'm fine wearing cheaper clothing, temporarily sacrificing on wearing lower end clothing so that I can save that money and invest into my future. That's the second thing, is frugal individuals, they have an alternative plan with the money that they save. They're very intentional with their money. Every dollar that I save, I put into an investment so that I can have a brighter and better future. And that's kind of my third point too, is they invest in the future. Cheap individuals only look for the cheapest deals. Just like the shower example that I showed up there, that was an example of me being cheap. That was a dumb investment. I should have went with a professional company that could give me a warranty, that I could ensure that the job was done right, rather than going with some independent contractor that didn't really have any reputation other than showing me a couple pictures of the jobs that he's done. That was an example of me being cheap, when it causes all this pain and this headache when I go and take a shower now, because it stresses me out that it wasn't done right and we were looking to have a really nice shower. So that's just one example. Cheap individuals also do not take into account valuing their time. An example of this is I have a lot of friends that ask me, Eric, why don't you do your own taxes? And it's like, that just kind of is mind-blowing to me, because taxes is very time-consuming. You have to be very knowledgeable with the tax code, and the time that it would take me to figure all of that out and actually do it would be way more expensive in my own personal life, to where if I just hired out a professional like I do to do my taxes, and that professional can then find other ways to save me money, figure out how to get me tax credits, figure out how to leverage my business expenses to lower my tax burden that I have to pay. Like, hiring a professional in certain areas is almost always worth it if it benefits you even more. It values your time, saves you time. And that's something a lot of cheap individuals don't take into account. I have friends that spend hours upon hours and hours doing their taxes, and they're not, like, they don't even really know that much about the tax code to where they're getting the most savings on their taxes anyway. So ultimately, it's actually costing them more. They're not taking into account the time that it takes to do things, and they're not taking into account that, hey, doing everything on your own is not always the best way to do things. One of my favorite quotes that my mentor says, he says, if you want something done right, don't do it yourself. Right? Like, there's a reason why There's experts available that can help you out. It's the same thing when it comes to courses and people want to scrimp and save and go find all the information out online. Because let's just face it, you could find all of the information that's in a lot of online courses, but if you just took the time or just spent $500 or $1,000 to invest in a course, that all the information in one area that you can learn everything from, and it's reliable, good information, then you are saving so much time than going out and hoping that you find the correct information to apply towards your business or that course or whatever it is that you're trying to learn. So that's something that cheap individuals will do. They will pass up on opportunity and they will not value their time. The last thing I see is they struggle to see the big picture. It just kind of comes back to that time thing again, to where they're struggling to see the bigger picture that, hey, sometimes spending money actually makes you more money, right? So I hope that kind of breaks down everything. I know I rambled a lot in this video. It's kind of all over the place, but I hope that kind of breaks down. You should strive to be a frugal individual and invest that money that you save, but don't short yourself on things that's going to affect your income or your lifestyle, right? So frugal versus cheap. That's all I got for that video. I hope that helped you guys out. If you guys want more information about like finances and investing and things like that, check out the free Facebook group. I'll have it linked below. I share what I do in my own personal finances and how I go about investing. So if you're interested in that, click on that link. And with that being said, I'll see everyone later. Take care.